Deep within the unforgiving expanse of the shifting sands, legend whispered of a hidden city. It was a city of wonder called Itharia. Itharia was said to hold the eternal flame. This flame was no mere campfire, it held the power of life itself. The flame was a beacon of hope. It promised prosperity to those who could find it. But the eternal flame was a double-edged sword. It was a powerful force. It demanded respect. Those who approached with greed or malice in their hearts faced a terrible curse. The flame would turn against them. It would consume them with its fiery wrath. Only the pure of heart could harness the flame's power. They had to be willing to give of themselves selflessly. The legend of Itharia was passed down through generations. It was told as a bedtime story. It became a cautionary tale. It was a reminder that true power came at a price. Few dared to seek the city. The desert was vast. The trials were said to be insurmountable, yet the legend endured. The hope of Itharia flickered in the hearts of the desperate. They prayed for a hero. They needed someone worthy to find the flame. They waited for the one who could unlock its power. Far from the shifting sands, nestled at the foot of the Whispering Mountains, lay the village of Avani. Avani was once a lush and fertile land. The villagers lived in harmony with nature. They respected the balance of life, but for years, a relentless drought had gripped the land. The once bountiful rivers had dwindled, crops withered and died. The villagers were desperate. Their pleas for rain went unanswered. Hope began to fade. The elders spoke of ancient legends. They talked of Itharia and its eternal flame. The flame represented the power of life over death. Could it be their salvation? Among the villagers lived a young shepherd named Kael. He was known for his kind heart and unwavering optimism. Kael loved his village. He was fiercely loyal to his people. He refused to let them perish. When he heard whispers of Itharia and its flame, a spark of hope ignited within him. Kael knew the risks. He understood the dangers of the shifting sands. He had heard the stories of the flame's curse. But desperation outweighed fear. Love for his village fueled his determination. He decided to embark on a perilous journey. Kael would find the eternal flame. He would save his people. Kael stood before the village elders. He sought their blessing. The elders were weary. They carried the weight of generations on their shoulders. They had seen too many summers without rain. Their hearts ached for their people. Yet they knew the dangers that lay ahead for Kael. Kael, son of Avani, the eldest, said, his voice raspy with age, "The path you choose is fraught with peril. The desert is a harsh mistress. She shows no mercy." Another elder nodded, adding, "The legend of Itharia is ancient. Some believe it to be nothing more than a myth." "I understand the risks," Kael replied, his voice firm despite the tremor in his heart, "but I cannot stand idly by while our people starve. The hope of Itharia is all we have left." His words resonated with the elders. They saw in him the spirit of their ancestors. A glimmer of hope flickered in their eyes. The eldest elder placed a weathered hand on Kael's shoulder. "May the spirits guide you, Kael. May your heart be your compass and your courage your shield." With heavy hearts but a glimmer of hope, they granted him their blessing. Their prayers followed him as he ventured into the unforgiving embrace of the shifting sands. The desert welcomed Kael with open arms. Those arms were scorching, wind-whipped, and deadly. The sun beat down relentlessly. The air shimmered with heat. The vastness of the desert was both daunting and awe-inspiring. Kael, guided by his faith in the legend and a determination that burned brighter than the desert sun, pressed onward. He followed ancient, dried-up riverbeds. They snaked through the dunes like the forgotten veins of a once great beast. He rationed his meager supplies of food and water carefully. He knew that every drop, every morsel might be his last. The desert tested him. It pushed him to his limits, but Kael was not alone. As he journeyed, he noticed strange occurrences. The wind seemed to whisper his name. It urged him onward. Lizards with shimmering scales would appear on his path. They stared at him with ancient eyes, then they would scurry towards the east. Could these be the mystical signs spoken of in the legends? One particularly scorching afternoon, as Kael stumbled, parched and weary, he saw it, a shimmering mirage on the horizon. It was a city of gold rising from the heart of the desert. His heart pounded with anticipation. Could this be Itharia? Had he found it? Or was it another cruel trick of the desert, playing on his hope? With renewed vigor, Kael surged forward. He raced towards the shimmering city. As he drew closer, the mirage solidified. Towers of sandstone carved with intricate designs pierced the sky. Golden banners, faded but proud, fluttered in the breeze. He had found Itharia, but the city was not abandoned. As Kael approached the towering gates, two figures emerged from the shadows. They were tall and regal, their bodies cloaked in flowing robes. Their faces were obscured by golden masks. They were the guardians of the flame, tasked with protecting the city and its treasure for eternity. "Halt, traveler!" one of the guardians boomed, his voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. "What brings you to the lost city of Itharia?" Kael, awed by their presence but undeterred, stepped forward. "My village is dying," he pleaded, his voice hoarse with thirst and exhaustion. "We are plagued by drought. Only the eternal flame can save us." The guardians exchanged a silent glance. Their masked faces revealed nothing. "The path to the eternal flame is not for the faint of heart," the other guardian warned, his voice like the rustling of ancient scrolls. "Many have sought its power, but few have possessed the purity of spirit to claim it." "I am willing to face any trial," Kael declared, his voice unwavering. He knew that the fate of his village rested on his shoulders. The guardians, sensing the purity of his heart and the desperation in his soul, nodded. "Very well," one of them conceded, "but be warned, the trials of Itharia test not your strength, but the very essence of your being." And so Kael faced the trials of Itharia. He was led through a labyrinth of echoing chambers, each one presenting a different challenge. He faced illusions of his deepest fears and temptations of unimaginable power. The trials were designed to break him, to expose any trace of selfishness or doubt within his heart. But Kael persevered. Through each challenge, he clung to the image of his village. He saw the faces of his loved ones, their eyes filled with hope. He remembered the parched earth, the withered crops, and the prayers for rain. He would not let them down. His love for his people was his shield, his selflessness, his sword. The trials intensified, pushing Kael to the very brink of his endurance. He was tempted to take shortcuts, to embrace power for himself, but each time the memory of his village, the weight of their hope, pulled him back from the precipice. Finally, Kael stood before the last chamber. The air crackled with energy. He could feel the heat of the eternal flame beckoning him forward. He entered the chamber and gasped. The heart of Itharia was a cavernous chamber, its walls adorned with shimmering crystals that pulsed with an otherworldly light. In the center, atop a pedestal of obsidian, blazed the eternal flame. It was a sight of unimaginable beauty and power. Tongues of fire danced and swirled, their colors shifting from deepest crimson to blinding gold. Kael felt a pull, an almost irresistible urge to reach out and claim the flame's power for himself. But as he stepped closer, he noticed something etched into the base of the pedestal. It was a single word, carved in a language he couldn't understand, yet somehow he knew its meaning: sacrifice. Suddenly, he understood. The eternal flame was not a gift to be taken, but a force to be channeled. It demanded a price, a sacrifice of the purest kind. Kael knew what he had to do. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. He embraced the flame, offering his own life force as a conduit. He felt a searing pain, an unimaginable heat that threatened to consume him. But he held on, his love for his village fueling his sacrifice. Back in Avani, the villagers huddled in their homes, praying for a miracle. The drought had reached its peak. Hope was dwindling with each passing hour. Suddenly the ground began to tremble. A deep rumbling echoed through the valley. The villagers rushed out of their homes in terror and astonishment. To their disbelief, a spring erupted in the center of the village. Crystal clear water gushed forth from the earth, cascading over the parched land. The villagers cheered, their faces a mixture of joy and disbelief. The rains had returned, not from the sky, but from the very heart of the earth. The elders, their eyes filled with tears of gratitude, knew the truth. Kael had succeeded. He had given his life to save his people. The eternal flame, channeled through his selfless sacrifice, had transformed into a life-giving spring, ensuring the prosperity of Avani for generations to come. The story of Kael's sacrifice became a legend passed down through generations of villagers. He was remembered as a hero, a symbol of selflessness and love. The spring, now known as Kael's Spring, became a sacred site. It was a place of pilgrimage for those seeking to honor his memory, and so the legacy of Kael, the shepherd who sacrificed everything for his people, lived on. He became a reminder that true power lay not in dominance or conquest, but in love, compassion, and the willingness to give of oneself for the greater good. His story echoed through the ages, a testament to the enduring power